so I might be turning my head just to make sure that the slides are correct. Can you see the screen?
Yes, I can see it good.
Okay, cool. Right. So this presentation is about Zygmunt Bauman's idea of liquid modernity, and I am merely going to introduce his concepts and how it fits into my analysis. To get a better idea of the genius of Bauman, you should really read some of his books or listen to his mesmerizing lectures. I really rate the guy very highly. He's a very genuine, or he was a very genuine and a very modest man. And he often claimed that despite of his insight, he could not really predict anything. But a decade or more later, and I think he's proved himself wrong. Um, so let me just. So before I start presenting, I just want to offer this slide to show how I am putting all these concepts that will be mentioned into a relationship with each other. And they're all important and they go towards creating a story. So we've got grand narratives, which are equal to what I call explicit specification and promises. And on the back of these promises, one creates a certain movement or a following and builds a trust between people, and everybody agrees to follow certain ideals to get the goal, to the goal. So if embodiment or implementation of these ideas get misaligned along the way, this means that the system is not coherent and the legitimacy is removed and the system is systemically corrupt. That's how I call it, and it just goes. It's what I've been talking about before. Idealism represents people believing in social contract and agreeing to trust each other at a higher level. So they are really prioritizing collective interests over individual. And if they suspect that other people are not doing the same or find that the society is not faithful to the promise of this ideal, they can withdraw participation and revert to individual goals. And I think that this presentation will go towards that and establish some sort of interconnectivity and um, connection between these things. So Bauman analyzes society in the modernity and how it over time becomes less coherent and structured. And as a consequence, our identity, relationship, and roles in society, they lose substance and also our mental health suffers. And his main focus is the phenomenological shift from stability to uncertainty, but he also hints that there is the ontological change in social structures. And there is a question whether we can know with any certainty that societal structures only became less coherent and misaligned with their stated values in this late modernity, or that they've never really been faithful to their ideas. And when we finally discover that to be the case, we assume that it's a new thing. And I'm just going to give an example. So if we drive a car for years on the same road and around the same bend, and we are always in perfect control, one day we drive it into the wall, and we could speculate that over the years the car deteriorated to the point of failure. But it could also be that the car has always been the same, but that there was something on the road that made it skid, or that we operated in a certain manner that wasn't appropriate for the conditions. So it's possible that all these societal structures always had the potential to go rogue and against their own logic, but were never given a strong reason or incentive to do so. But either way, the phenomenology of this remains valid. So um, Zygmunt Bauman analyzes modernity as a historical phase with distinct characteristics, and he focuses on social dynamics, and he tries to capture how it shaped our lives and experiences. And he detected a certain tension between order and change and used metaphors of solid and liquid to describe it. And then he also studied the effects and consequences of the modern society on the psychology of modern man. So, modernism as a period in the evolution of civilization or an epoch or an era is defined by its core ideals and the stories that support it and inspire those ideas, and they're encapsulated within this idea of grand narratives. And there is an ongoing relationship between ideals and narratives, and we can see here that Enlightenment gave us reason and science, and liberalism, freedom and individualism, and so on. And before modernity, we also had grand narratives, but they were based on religious doctrines. So defined laws and morals and basically legitimized the society the way it was and the governance as inevitable and divinely prescribed. And also there was mythology which reinforced those views with stories that painted that type of order in positive light. And then during the Enlightenment, we have new grand narratives emerging and proposing new visions for society. And they sort of gradually move away from religion and mythology towards rationality. And rationality really is the defining thing about modernity. So, main core ideal of modernity was belief in progress, that we can continue improving human conditions and human life through reason and rationality. And then science emerged as a rational tool or a vehicle for discovering knowledge. We had political theory coming up with liberal democracy, and capitalism simply proved itself a superior alternative to feudalism with its ability to create abundance and generate economical growth. And there is also this idea of universalism, which is an idea that we all as humans have equal rights, or that is the direction in which we should be going. And then we had French Revolution in the late 18th century, which challenged a little bit universalism because it was used against the existing power structure, and that led to transformation of subjects into citizens within nation states with sovereignty, civil rights, and representative governments within democracy or democratic system of governance. So the idea was to prevent future revolutions of this kind. So according to Bauman, during the 20th century, modernity gradually shifts from traditional and more structured social forms to more daring and experimental, meaningless structure. And the period before 1980s, he calls solid, and from 80s onward, and that coincides with the emergence of postmodernist movement, he calls liquid. And solid modernity was characterized by stability, permanence, low risk, and organization. And it followed grand narratives as inspiration. And it was seen as a collective endeavor where everyone participated enthusiastically in order to build a better future. So during this period, our identity is solid and collective, and we know where we belong and who our natural allies are, and we have unions and we trust institutions, and we feel like we are really in charge of a destiny as democratic citizens. And also, we all share these grand narratives, well, supposedly. By following, if we were to follow societal rules and can comply with the spirit, with the collective spirit of this vision for the future, and we prescribed to educational and career trajectories, we were pretty sure that we would have a good and successful life. So there was a certain script that people followed, and it rewarded them. It's kind of like belonging to a club and like reward points or whatever. Solid modernity stood for stability and permanence. So it believed that its institution as agents for implementing ideals of this grand narrative should be followed faithfully because it cared about coherence. It believed that without coherence, people would just stop subscribing to it. They would withdraw their participation. Um, and this is really an important aspect because people considered themselves to be the system and they cared about its survival. Um, and then we have this shift from solid to liquid. And really, a liquid modernity is just an evolutionary continuation of solid modernity. And officially, all overarching grand narratives are still followed. But the changes that introduced, maybe through the small door, are profound. And it started prioritizing opportunity maximization and economical growth over remaining faithful to the integral logic of systems and supporting the relationship between these promises of grand narratives and implementation, what they actually do. And there is also a shift from collective responsibility to prioritizing individual interests. And I've got, let me just see if I've got a slide for it. Yeah. So there is this, I mean, it's very difficult to actually figure out what happened. And I think everything is a little bit of a post hoc realization here. Um, and 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 this presentation could have been really infinitely big if you probed all the avenues or all the execution paths and likely scenarios. But um, I'll just list some points. And we have this desire to consume future. We feel that we can somehow tap into the invisible. It's sort of like find invisible space and get some value out of it. And that became a little bit of our obsession. So we somehow want to transfer future value into present so we can enjoy the benefits and postpone the work and risk to future generation. And that is, I think, a good example of it is credit expansion. It's really kind of finding innovative way of somehow turning abstract things, non-tangibles, into some sort of commodity. And we also wanted to go faster. We just wanted to get there as quickly as possible. And we were obsessed with playing with optimization. We also wanted to become more individualistic, which is probably something that comes back all the way from existentialism and self-realization. And maybe that is something that is really innate in us, and that is like one of these big contradictions here. We became, along the way, a globalized society, and that put a lot of pressure and demands on us with globalized supply chains. We had to worry about interest rates. We had to worry about competition. And in order to become more agile, we gradually deregularize everything, and our society becomes less normative. And in pursuit of economic growth and wealth, we try to tap into ever more granular, short-lived, and maybe short-lived opportunities that we are identifying that demand extreme agility. And so we need to be able to change. We cannot count or we cannot bank on permanence. And things like pensions, labor protection, and stable income, they become a side worry that is not at the fore of what we are trying to do. So we end up with a society where we constantly need to reinvent ourselves to become to be able to meet these opportunities and demands that reality and society places at us at a very short notice. So our jobs become freelance gigs and 0 hours and contracts. And so we moved from specialization, which was a big thing in the solid modernity, and we move on to agility. And that also affects our identity because we're not anymore specialists. We are universalists. We are generalists, and we don't come under certain specific labels. So yeah. So it's all good so far in terms of that kind of the world became what the world wanted to become. It wanted to become richer. It wanted things to become faster. It wanted to have more freedom and flexibility. The only thing that it could not predict and envisage is certain negative externalities. So we became braver at messing up with things because we got certain confidence in ourselves, in the science, in our rationality, that it's all for good. So any kind of risk gets rewarded, and we're going to fix things later. And then we accumulated a death of all this risk taking or careless risk taking. It's sort of our losses that we somehow managed to hide away or somehow collateralize. And it turned out that there's some real problems, and that's what we are getting to now. And in my opinion, the real problems are systemic breakdown, psychological breakdown, and environmental breakdown. And just see if I've got anything on this. So, perhaps the most important one is the sacrifice of the coherence. And people mention coherence in different contexts, and for me, it's a key thing. It's just something that we as humans and we as logical and rational beings really connect to. And institution and systems in this liquid modernity cannot be relied on anymore to stand behind its promises. And that is because the systems need to be changing constantly in order to counteract the effect of this systemic death that never gets rectified and always gets accumulated. So we are inventing little fixes, and similar to how some people would do in software design. You create a little work around the problem because it's too much work and it's too much hassle to address the very foundations. So many of the values and ideas of modernity and their associated grand narratives get quietly dropped while some are still going strong, giving the pretense of progress continuing. And progress is continuing in a particular way, but at the same time, there is a toll. And that toll is maybe not quantified because it's hidden. So there is some sort of collateral damage. Some of the stuff is going well, some of the stuff is not. And there is a delayed effect of when the actual collapse will take place. But the elites, people who are running the world, are still making money, and they maybe even have some sort of advanced knowledge of it as well, and trying to position themselves to be in the best possible position when things turn sour. So eventually, systems start failing across the coherence spectrum, and I've identified this coherent spectrum as being internal and practical and narrative, and they really tie in with these concepts that Bauman's talking about, or like many other different concepts, but they're all kind of in the same vein. They follow the same logic. And as a result of that, another important concept is idealism, because idealism weakens because the beliefs cannot exist without logical structure. That's how we form a beliefs. We cannot just randomly subscribe to beliefs. They need to make some sort of sense. So the lack of care really spirals out of control, and systems lose their legitimacy. So legitimacy is another concept which is really important. So when idealism dies, corruption sets in. That is when people give up their noble ideals, which are bigger than themselves, and they move to their individual needs. which is again very sort of like a normal thing. They're losing trust, and they can only trust themselves. So this incoherence is also locked and reproduced through societal power fields and institutions, which are economics, politics, I don't know, media and culture and so it kind of gets locked in, and it gets encoded, and it gets passed through probably in the same way when the economists were doing those dodgy synthetic instruments when they were trying to repackage their worthless debt into AAA security. That is like a good kind of analogy. And then we have a psychological breakdown, which is probably the subject of what. Let me just see if I've got anything on that. Psychological breakdown, which is what Bauman refers to liquid fear. So we are lost because we as individuals do not know how to fit in anymore. We are not sure if it's us or if it's the world, because we don't fit in the world and we don't know what the world is really about because it loses structure. So we're not sure if we are in some sort of elaborate game or if this is the reality. And we cannot change in order to fit in because we don't know how to change. And even finding a job and any permanence and security is impossible, because we're not anchored to the world, and the world is like shapeless. It changes before our eyes. So the constant state of fear and obsession with changing alienates us from ourselves as well. And in liquid modernity, our identity becomes fluid. It is not enough to follow some sort of prescribed trajectory because there isn't one anymore. Or maybe by the time we found out what we should be doing, we are too late. So everything changes all the time. And we must be always willing to remold ourselves into whatever shape reality requires to. And it goes for our like beliefs and our rights and our obligation. Everything is changed. The whole landscape, the whole container of our being is impermanent. And world is an unstable place, and most of the anchors that grounded us to reality have either disappeared or eroded. And we are now fully individual, which on one hand we always wanted to be, but it also means that our risk is fully our own. We are 100% risking everything if we make like a single wrong move. So we also live in the world of proxies, and everything to us appears to be a black box because we do not know how things will react when we push things to them or how we probe them. So there is no clear path of escalation, how to get out of it, who to call for help. And when things work, we don't exactly know why they're working or for how long. So there is this kind of pattern of the system reacting differently at different times. That there is no permanence to it. We can't glean any insight into how it will react ultimately. And all sorts of interesting scenarios can be conjured in our heads. So meaning crisis is also because the meaning is fluid and we are constantly striving for coherence and security that never comes. Um, and I'm now on idealism and coherence. So this is a really important thing because it puts into perspective us who have prescribed to the subscribed to this system and help this system formulate itself and implement itself. So we are stakeholders, and how we've been let down or what we need to what are the conditions under which we will still participate in the system. So if we believe generally that a certain ideal holds key to our future and happiness, we do not want to betray it because we will be betraying ourselves. And a belief in a better society is a passionate affair, and romantic relationship is in a way the same thing. You're investing into your joint future and you agree to to a certain social contract where you will trust somebody on the basis of something, but you need certain consistency to make sure that you're not being taken for a ride or taken advantage of. So idealism is belief in a better world, imagined ideal that society should strive forward. But we can't just believe in anything, again. So we are looking for coherence, and that represents the structure of our belief. So for idealism to be alive and inspiration, it must be internally coherent, which means that the system, it cares about itself, not self-defeating or suffering from autoimmune disease. Practically coherent, which means that it really respects its promises, it aligns to the promises with action, and narratively coherent, there is a convincing story, what was wrong and how to fix it, and this is the correct way to do it. And there is a reinforced feedback loop of negative externalities. I'm just going to cover that very briefly. So in what happens in liquid modernity, in pursuit of progress and growth, we try to speed up, optimize, and we risk. And we achieve greater agility, but gradually the system itself is less and less faithful to its ideals, and it loses our collective endorsement. So we shift our allegiances to ourselves, individualism. Individualism makes us weak and in perpetual stress and fear, and we turn to consumerism and short-term dopamine fixes to be able to survive and to function. And then we become polarized and cynical and maybe even nihilistic. And it just goes in this loop, kind of reinforced loop, until it's probably going to grind to a halt, because it cannot continue like this. And I've got liquid fear, which is pretty much what I covered. Bauman talks about liquid fear, which explains the psychological effects of the instability of the world and society on us. And it's ambiental anxiety, and it turns into blind fear as we lose societal grounding and encounter this systemic incoherence and uncertainty. And nothing really in the world seems solid enough anymore, and we are not able to predict execution paths and outcomes. And we are paralyzed with uncertainty. We are constantly trying to recalibrate, to find out what's wrong with us, to re-educate, to reinvent ourselves, and make sense how society works. But we can't, because the society doesn't work in any way. It just changes all the time, in small ways, in big ways, and in unpredictable ways. And this constant reinvention and hypervigilance of new trends creates this permanent anxiety. And also, a really interesting thing that Bauman raises is liquid modernity creates redundant people. So people who have been displaced either physically or sidelined and made irrelevant. And as modernity moves more and more towards chaos, because chaos is perfect agility. And I just remember a story, whether it's true or not. Like when they built the Eurofighter, they wanted to make it extremely agile. And in order to do that, it was inherently unstable. So without computers, you cannot actually fly Eurofighter. And that is really good, good illustration to what lens you need to do to perfect this super agile machine that will give you the edge. So we live in a chaos. We don't belong, because how can you belong? Chaos is undefined, and you need certain classification to be able to belong. People can't find work. It was once part of the chain of certainty and life's trajectory. Like you went to good school, you found a good job, you retired, and you got a good pension, but it's not the case anymore. So with progress and improvements, Does it make a better world for us? Well, we are becoming more productive, more automated. The AI is taking over, replacing people, and the need for people is diminishing. So some occupations are becoming obsolete in short space of time. Um, so anyway, ambience of uncertainty, um, and um, Bauman also says like this results in victims fighting victims because we are all victims in this globalized world where we don't know where we belong. And when victims fight victims, the perpetrators can sleep quietly and continue their destruction. So that's a powerful thought. And we have like a solution, and like that's a weird one. So liquid modernity really just continued to represent some of the original ideals of modernity, even though it drops some of them. But despite all the negative externalities, people love their individualism and have found solace in consumerism. So we can see that we cannot revert to past states because they were our starting point, and they were the basis from which we went forward. So progress has a direction. Progress does have negative externalities, um, alienation, instability, loss of meanings, but solution is not reversal. You can't kind of go back in time because it's not going to please people. There are many things that we are happy to have got rid of. Um, so let me just see if I've got anything else. So that's it. So that's it. And I hope you enjoyed it and looking forward to your questions. And I wish I knew how to get this sharing thing off. Okay. How do I stop sharing?
I think it should be in the middle, maybe.
There's usually at the top of the screen. In my on my version, there's a
Oh, at
thing
the
saying
top of the
stop sharing.
screen. Oh, okay, I can see. Share. Modernity.
Oh right, no, it's not. Okay.
Remove pane.
Oh, you've not actually shared the presentation, so
Oh,
right.
were you not seeing my presentation?
Oh yeah, actually we were. Yeah. That's very odd. I
But
don't know.
for me, it's in the
Um,
middle of the bottom bar. Is it? Is it there for you?
yeah, I got into shared screen, but it says share as opposed to stop sharing.
Yeah, it's an overlay. So if you move your cursor over the Zoom screen, something will appear, and somewhere
Okay.
a little overlay will be stopped.
Pause share. Stop share. Yeah, great.
Ah, well
Okay.
done.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was brilliant.
I think you were first, Naima. Do you want to go?
Yeah, okay. So, based on your solution, like your proposed solution, so the idea is like the goal would be to resist liquidity, adapt to it, or like is there some kind of a dialectical balance between fluidity and structure in your proposed model?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and something that I've been thinking about. So I call this replacement theory. So whenever you want to move to a new paradigm and you realize you're going to lose some of the aspects which are absolutely fundamental and existential to human beings, you must have a good idea what you're going to replace it with. And the promise was there that it will be replaced. But because of the way that the society prioritized certain things, though that part of the promise was not fulfilled. So we ended up in a society which did not do it. I mean, Matthew, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's see. I guess the question I had is somewhat related. I'm also thinking a bit of Bruno Latour. I haven't read this book, but it talks about this tension of where do we land between those two, like a kind of solid and liquid states, kind of. And yeah, my question is more so about Bauman and this, I guess, metaphor of solid and liquid, if he uses it in other places as well. Like, have other societies or cultures gone through this balance of solid and liquid? Or is it kind of, does he just apply it to modernity?
He uses these metaphors, but he's talking specifically about the Western modernity and the movement from solid. But then again, criticism or maybe some background information where modernity comes from, feudalism, was also solid in a sense. Religion is very solid. There's no ambiguity about it. You've got a Bible and you've got institutions which pretty faithfully try to push through some of the ideas from Bible. But if we're talking about solidity and liquidity itself, China stands for solidity very firmly. It cares about its system. It's consistent. It's centralized. I have heard that there is a local governance there, but it's purely there because they're not yet at the level when they can get rid of it. The local government is the source of the ugliest types of corruption, which ultimately lead to the loss of idealism and destroy everything. That's my opinion. Jonah?
Yeah, thanks. Really great presentation. I guess I'm just sort of trying to connect up some of the ideas there with maybe some of the other ideas we've talked about and ideas in the Second Renaissance ecosystem, like, I mean, and you yourself referred to the meaning crisis, and I think a lot of these ideas actually provide a really good way of understanding that. I guess I'm wondering about meta crisis as well, and it seems like this can be understood as a model of that, in that you mentioned sort of environmental risks, and tracing that back to modernity is very much in line with the sort of Second Renaissance framing of the meta crisis, and seeing liquid modernity as a continuation of modernity, that's consistent with that too. I guess I wonder sort of how much Bauman talks about catastrophic risks in that sense, and sort of explicitly traces those to these sort of liquid modern structures. Yeah.
He covered quite deeply the migration crisis around the world, and basically says that is the manifestation, that is dystopian future that we will be facing ourselves. And he really beautifully describes it, and he talks about these immigrants coming on our shores and disheveled and lost without having anything. It's just a picture of us from dystopian future, and that's what it is. So the point is, that's why it's really important, this idealism, because if you don't care, you don't care. If all you think about how you are going to survive personally, we don't have a system. The system is just symbolic. It is just it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and we will go in that direction until we hit the hard bottom, right? And then we have to recoil from there. I think he talks about it and refers to it in the same way. He was very concerned about it.
Yeah, Martin, just sorry, Sean and Zen, but I don't think he framed migration as a dystopian like consequence or future of liquid modernity. I don't think like this is accurate.
No, he does, yeah. So I actually got he's posted a big article in one of the American papers, and I read it just recently. And basically, he's saying, I can find out. I've got it. So, like what he said about it, really. Yes. So basically, he refers to it. Basically, migration is undetachable companion of modern way of life, and he says this is his story about people redundant, people living in places and they don't have purpose anymore, because we are obsessively building ever better order of things, and these people who are dispossessed or placeless or they have no future, they must find a new way of life elsewhere. And economic progress or capitalism is all about finding how to make things with less labor and less cost. And then he's talking about diasporization, which is his term for it. And he says that and he talks about how this idea of integrating the world and multiculturalism against uh, multiple cultures. So he talks a lot about it. I can find like exactly where he talks
Yeah.
about it as a
Yeah, but
dystopian.
desperization is different than migration. Like
Yeah.
you actually traveling, being an expat to finding new economic opportunities is completely different than having your country at war and like fleeing and yeah. So
He basically says that the only reason why people flee their countries because they don't have future there. And he says that is the result of the way that the world, the way it's going, prioritizing profit and capitalist way, is actually finding a way of making their life worthless where they find themselves. So they have to look for a place for themselves because where they are is not a place for themselves. So I'll send you some links, but I've actually listened. I think it's also done. But anyway, some other people want to ask questions. Sean, Simon.
Thanks, Martin. That it brought up something personal for me that I'll start with, and then I'll get into my question. I think you mentioned the 80s is when the shift happened, and my family had worked at Procter and Gamble for generations, starting with my great grandfather through to my father. He started there when he was 18 and retired recently, but in the 90s, they closed the plant here in my hometown. And so he was forced to move. Like he had no other experience. He had to stay there. So he was forced to move 4 hours away. My parents were split at that point. So I just wanted to say that, yeah, I felt this very personally. This has happened to me, this shift. And what kept coming up for me was the class struggle portion of it, like a Marxist view, that it seems like the upper classes have the liquidity and they're driving it, where the lower classes want the stability and a solid life. So there's a conflict inherent there.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that is the case because the the mobile and the rich, they're looking for more action. They're looking for more opportunities to assert themselves as self-actualizers. So they're really in a different kind of type of game altogether. This is this huge polarization which removes the middle bit and leaves dispossessed and masters of the universe. And masters of the universe create meritocratic ideologies that justify what they're doing. It's personal, perfectly reasonable from their point of view, but that is what is happening really. That will ultimately create this idea that's already started, that there are some people who are worthless. And why they're worthless is because there are no jobs for them. They're not contributing anything because everything, how we value human beings, there is a monetary value on human being, like how much money we should spend on a patient, right? With view to prolonging their life X number of years. So that's happening, yeah. Simon?
Jen is next. Jen was before me.
Okay, Jan, sorry.
Hi. thank you very much for that. I think it was really, really detailed. I think a very nice kind of picture of everything, these steps, and this idea of coherence and the breakdown of coherence, the breakdown of the stories of how we're valued and how we're kind of being in the world. And then that kind of break of the trust and truth, kind of axis of trust and truth in our society. And I'm just wondering whether he speaks much to, I mean, that's really the Western story, isn't it? It's kind of the thread of European, from the Enlightenment and all the kind of agricultural kind of revolution kind of focusing, and then we've got the Industrial Revolution, the Information Revolution, but it's very much a Western story. And of course, the world isn't made up entirely of the Western story. There's a lot more going on. There is indigenous, but there's also many people who are just not that engaged with that mental kind of thinking. They may be hungry, they may be migrating, but they're not migrating with those thoughts in mind. They're just hungry. So I'm just wondering how he speaks to that, and also, I suppose, to the vast and non-human world and the sense of meaning and coherence there, that sort of the kind of holistic, integrated meaning of the planet rather than just our Western story. So, and I just, the last thing, sorry, I'm going to cover all these questions. The other thing I was thinking about, where you said towards the end that we can't go backward, and that was something that couldn't possibly be done. And I'm wondering whether he has questioned that at all, or whether he just feels that that's how it is, or maybe how you feel that's how it is, that we can't actually say we've gone up the wrong path and perhaps reverse is the best. I kind of, that's problematic.
Yeah, let me just clarify this. I mean, it's purely my idea, and a lot of stuff I added in and kind of incorporated within what he was trying to say, because a lot of stuff that he's talking about really fits in with how I think. And I just expanded on it. I felt in some areas he didn't maybe probe deep enough, and I didn't go into that. I actually analyzed quite a lot the ontological side of it, whether these institutions have really failed us and have really stopped corresponding to the ideals, but it just goes like very wide. But with regards to your question about the world in its the world as a much bigger thing than the Western world, I think he really concentrates on the Western modernity because it has seen such a phenomenal success in terms of progress. If you can imagine this arrow pointing into the future, and it's been uninterrupted, even though there's been casualties like left, right, and center. But that's what he's focusing on, and also he's talking about a plane without a pilot. So whatever we think, we are really just observers, because there is no way anymore even to take control over modernity, because we don't represent it anymore. It has a life of its own because we have withdrawn our consent. We are enjoying the benefits, but we are refusing to endorse it. So we're kind of ignoring what it does badly, but we are kind of forgiving it because it gives us the fix that we want. And maybe he does talk in some other places, but what I've found out so far is, and what I've been focused on, is the story about modernity from solid to liquid modernity that starts from 18th century all the way to 1980s, when this idea with postmodernism that you can deconstruct the world, and economical advances that manage to tap into ever smaller trends, which are sometimes opposite of fundamental trends, and somehow capitalize on them. So it's all some sort of synthetic, weird world that we live in. And that's what I tried to describe. Simon, please.
Thank you. My turn. Thank you. I think this is really fascinating. Thank you. And I was just looking at this article on late modernity in Wikipedia, which actually seems to be quite helpful, because it actually clarifies that there's a difference of opinion between the liquid modernity and the postmodern thinkers. And also, of course, remembering that Bauman was born in 1925, so he would be 100 now. So he's actually not quite contemporary anymore. But what what interests me is the other thing that's the thread that's been coming up in some of our forums about the different waves in different parts of society, that you get modernity first arising in all the different paradigms first arising in art, and then and then finally working through to general public. And it strikes me that maybe one interesting way of looking at this would be this is the distinction between postmodern thinkers and liquid modernity is maybe in this dislocation between the leaders stroke whatever elite and have moved on to postmodernity, but the ordinary people have still just reached modernity, if you like, in their mindset, in their paradigm, which to me goes along very much along with Robert Keegan, because he was saying that actually only about half the people have reached his level 4 of stuff, which is the modern, basically. So I'm wondering if we can look at this in those terms, like looking at the different sort of, I won't say levels exactly, but strata, the different kind of bits of society, and saying, well, some of them have moved on and some of them haven't. And so liquid modernity is modernity for the general population. And of course, it's not being led that way anymore. So no wonder it's falling apart. Something like that.
I cannot add very much to that, but I can only say that I see postmodernism as a philosophical movement, and it's really reaching into some deep abstract thinking, while liquid modernity is simply the sentiment where people see that it's all coming to an end, it's all accelerating, we're losing control, and they're trying to make as much while it lasts because they simply don't know what's coming next. So I see it as that, and I actually do not know exactly the relationship, even though it's uncanny, some of the stuff that comes out of postmodernism and how it was incorporated by Bauman into liquid modernity. And there is a deep correlation, but I think these are different things, really. But that's just my opinion. Thanks.
I'll
Robert.
just leave it by look at the have a look at the article anyway. It's interesting.
Robert.
Hi. So just 3 quick comments. First of all, it sounds to me like Bauman's a very good phenomenology of cultural trends in the West over the past several decades. Second observation, it falls short of a totalizing social theory, but then again, why should we want it to be that? What's missing in the analysis can be supplied from other sources. And then finally, from a long-term historical point of view, the ancient world and the medieval world were quite a bit more liquid than that analysis lets on, including non-Western civilizations. So I wouldn't totalize the recent West as being the consummate liquid society. I mean, just to give an example, the Galilee of Jesus was entirely liquid and unstuck and meaning crisis afflicted and yada, yada, yada.
Robert, I couldn't agree more. And I could fault, that's why I didn't want to go there. But it actually doesn't really matter because it so perfectly describes in the notion of liquid fear how we feel. And that is that we've been brought up to think that there is an order and there are execution paths and there are escalation levels and there are prescribed ways of doing things, and all of a sudden we find out there aren't. So that is the real takeaway that I think, and I can relate to it very much so. Not because I'm disadvantaged, it's because I'm frustrated by inability to assert myself and do good things, because I can see that the system is really failing me. And I feel in this state of of uncertainty, which is so strong that it really strikes kind of chord with what he's talking about. But that's why I said ontologically, it's a whole new research to find out whether it's the case or not. Whether they were so, but phenomenologically, it's true because we were brought up on a much more idealistic terms. Our parents really believed that things worked and they are there for them, etc. And then we gradually found out they're not. So whether, yeah. But yeah, I agree with you. Naima, please.
Yeah, so I've been hearing these isolated sentences and something popped in my head like liquid modernity reaching like populations, and is it just Western constrained, and people migrate or leave their countries because they're hungry. So it's just fragmentation, and I'm trying to make a coherence out of them in my head from southern global south perspective. And I'm thinking, how about like forced migration to supplement European agriculture and European manufacturing? Is this like, and the neo-economic colonialism out of it? Like, how does this fit into liquid modernity? Did liquid modernity reach these people who are being taken advantage of? Like, do we consider them into this paradigm of liquid modernity, or are they excluded, or we just are they just collateral damage in a sense? And I'm not yet talking about people who are displaced by war. Also, like why war happened in certain, yeah, in certain parts of the world. Why hunger happens in certain parts of the world, and yeah, this like overweight pandemic. How does it happen if everybody is hungry? So yeah, just random existential thoughts. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's very good. For me, the most striking thing is that we stopped pretending. So I take it that it's possible that these structures were never faithful to their ideas, but there was an attempt to pretend. Just like I don't know, Soviet Union and China considered demonstrations to be something extremely dangerous, and then we realized, well, it's not a big deal. People demonstrate and nothing will happen. So that is how the thought evolved. And what I think we are seeing now, that finally this pretense of caring from people who are running the thing has dropped, and then everybody else is kind of like shocked because, oh, like it looks like really nobody cares about it. And maybe nobody ever cared about it. But the difference is that they're not pretending they care. And we can go like, why? Because there is always a story why.
Yeah,
It's not a naive thing. Yeah.
but because also certain narratives have become obsolete and they've lost their meaning also. So when the World Bank comes to supplement a country, like everybody now understands that they are putting them under debt. When you say like there is economical sanctions and please allow aid, it's a joke. You understand, like it's people now have this awareness where before they didn't have this awareness about how the system functions.
Do people really matter in like even democracy?
For me,
Our
it's not
democracy. No,
democracy.
what I
I
mean,
don't
what I
say.
mean from
Yeah.
their elite viewpoint, do we matter anymore because they found out how they can manipulate us into where they want us to? Like, I'm exaggerating, right? But what I mean is, let's be realistic about it, right? Idealism is gone. It's dead, and it should be dead because it was just false, right? We need to reinvent idealism. That's what I'm trying to get to. Like, so the world is coming to an end. Liquid modernity is acceleration into the wall. It's like it's going off the cliff, literally.
Good.
That's what's happening, right? But then what happens next is going to be, another
In that sense,
cycle of.
then in that sense, I command Trump the most liquid of us all.
John or Matthew?
Yeah, thanks. I'm aware we probably need to wrap up fairly soon, but I just feel like something that's maybe been missing from the discussion so far is we've been talking a lot about the sort of phenomenology of this liquid modernity is involving this sort of sense of deep uncertainty and heading towards a sort of car crash of civilization. And in terms, when you talked about the solutions Bauman was offering, you talked about, I guess, at the structural level, trying to reintegrate meaning into, I guess, sort of ideas of community and redesigning systems. I wonder whether there's a missing element here is focusing on what individuals can do in terms of their own phenomenology and experience to, I guess, experience modernity differently. And so I'm thinking of the way people like John Vervaeke or Joanna Macy talk about, using practices like meditation and relational practices to change the way they experience it and respond to a very real objective crisis in a more optimistic way. And yeah, I guess maybe that links to what you were saying about certain elites actually experiencing this liquid modernity differently, and to some extent they've done that. But yeah, I just thought that was maybe an important element here.
Jonah, I really think it's important to, and even if, when I was writing this, I was thinking like not all of it is bad. Like they're bad things, but if you actually ask people, like, is this good or is this good? Like, the fact that we don't live with our families, and like there are many kind of things which are enlightenment ideals, and we follow them through. So the point is to find out what is bad, what is the negative externality, and to replace it without destroying what's good. That is progress, because you can't go back. I mean, you can, but I can't see how it's going to work, because who's going to buy it? Nobody will buy it, right? So that is like how I'm viewing things. And so I don't even know, how do you call that? Like, is that some sort of like rationalism, or what type of position is that? But we need to create new structures, because we definitely need societal structures, but they will not be the same as they were before. They will not be kinships, they will not be extended families. We need to find a way of building something with people who or removing trust issues, or building new protocols. So that is how I see things. And also, like, interesting thing is, like, when you lose big narratives, grand narratives, you move to smaller narratives, and then smaller and smaller and smaller, localized, and then finally it's your individual. So when you want to revert from that individual, you can't be building grand narrative. You need to be going in the same direction. So all you can do is create little pockets of solidarity and cohesion with others. So that is, for me, like the most obvious thing. We need to be building these groups of people who care for each other and who can help each other empower and synergize and build things together. But that is not what we are generally talking about. We're always talking about grand ideas of waving magic wand and turning this into a cultural revolution, which I think is far away from.
But how do you differentiate it from identity politics as well?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it is some sort of identity politics, because you are trying to find some similarities with people to align yourself. But it's a good question. I don't have all the answers. I just think that it's
I know
clear
it-
what. Yeah.
I know we don't have the answers, but it's questions to be brought to the forefront.
Sorry, Matthew. Oh, sorry, Jan. I mean, I don't know whose turn is.
I think I might have been next. I'll try and be quick, but
Okay,
there's
yeah.
definitely a lot to say. It's funny, Simon, you read my mind. I was going to bring up islands of coherence. But I'm also kind of interested in like scientific or natural science metaphors as it relates to social form. And again, to kind of do a little like show and tell, or our recent pickups, I picked up this book, Aspects of Form, which I guess is from a conference that happened maybe 50 or 60 years ago, kind of on this publication of growth in form, or relating to this publication of growth in form. And one of the first essays deals with this theme of solid, liquid, and gas, which is kind of why I brought it up before, and I thought it was interesting. And I think it's kind of interesting to look at social form in this way, or under this lens, as something that's solid, or like set in stone, and kind of believed and kind of taken for granted in a way. And then there's the liquid, which is a little more maybe unstable, and then maybe even gas, which is like completely something else, whatever that might look like. So I think there's an interesting metaphor to be taken from the natural sciences. And I think in trying to understand social form, because I think social form is kind of a big question, or trying to exploring this theme of social form is kind of something I'm interested in. And I think we're having a lot of conversations about whatever social form is, which obviously is much different from inorganic form, because it's conscious and participatory in a different way. But then that also drew me to thinking of islands of coherence with Prigogine, because he kind of talks about how new forms arise in these smaller pockets, or in these smaller groups. It's funny how you kind of intuited that, Simon, or put that in the chat. But I just think these metaphors of solidity, liquidity, and maybe even gas kind of contribute, or natural science metaphors can contribute to this question of social form and what it is, because I think that's kind of a central theme. Social form, what is it, how do we participate in it, how do we kind of work with it, etc.
And we can experiment with that, but people are just reluctant, and you can do it in so many innovative ways every single day with very little effort, experimenting with what it means. So interesting, fascinating. Jen, Robert?
Yeah, Robert, I think you're before me.
Okay, thanks. So I want to just respond briefly to Naima. First of all, I completely agree that this all sounds Western-centric to me. And I also find it somewhat lacking in cultural materialist and world systems analysis. And if you want to get into decolonization and what's really going on outside of the industrialized West, we have to get into material factors and power politics and ideology. So, a lot of this liquid modernity just sounds like the mindset of the Ivy League West circa the 1980s to the present day, which it's real enough in that milieu, but let's not project that onto the whole world and imagine that everybody's in Harvard undergrad agonizing about which major to declare.
Well, I don't know, really. I mean, I see that a lot of people are in a deep state of turmoil. I don't think it's limited to the elites. If anything, the elites are more immune, and see it as an intellectual problem where it's lived through experience for millions of people now, and more than ever. I fully believe that what we started here in the West has led to breakdowns of societies around the world. Jen, do you want to?
Yeah, so I'm just a bit like Nima. I'm kind of feeling I try to kind of take very holistic kind of views of things, because sometimes we've got very much the details and hierarchies and how these different things are all working, and we're looking in the rear mirror all the time, everything we've done previously. And I'm just thinking, and I'm really concerned about these ideas that we can't go back, we can't retrain ourselves or revisit some of the things that are missing, which are really good. But also about these story arcs, we're looking at quite a small scale, and I think there might be some story arcs that are much, much longer. So for example, just going to use a tiny example, say I decide it's okay for me to throw my rubbish at the bottom of my garden. And I might even do it for a few years. And it seems fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. And then slowly the problems start to come and the rats come. And basically I've had a story about my world of throwing away. And I realize away doesn't exist because away is here. So, and I wonder if we're not looking far enough back. I mean, we may even need to go right back to the agricultural revolution or the Enclosures Act or these kind of ideas of domination and extraction, which go way, way, way back in history, and say, maybe that's, you know, when we stopped looking at the world as a whole and started to look at it as a resource to be extracted and to be dealt with and what have you. So I mean, I kind of just really sometimes feel concerned that we might be tweaking something in the hope of fixing it, and actually the arc of history is looking much, much longer, and some of the changes. I mean, I love this thing about you talking about caring, because I think if we start to care again, instead of I'm just me and mine, so like, and we have to feel what's happening in Gaza. We have to feel what's happening in Sudan. We have to feel that our neighbor is suffering. So if we start to feel, and it's horrible to feel, and yet if we don't feel, we don't have the energy to make the changes, the drastic changes we need. That's just kind of my thing. I was also going to like a little practical note with this group, because this is my first time. Is there like somewhere where we because I'm sometimes a bit of a slow thinker, and it's really nice to like have written stuff. Is there somewhere where your presentation is and all that? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Jan, like two things I wanted to raise. One of them is this being situational in terms of that there is no out perspective. Every perspective we have is an in perspective. It's contextual. So it's really impossible to create some sort of objective and like a positive outlook and a view that is going to be outside of your context. So so that's what I was going to say, and I want to say something else, but I forgot what it was. Yeah, I don't know. How do we start caring? Who is we? You know, like we don't exist anymore because we don't stand behind anything. We've been liquidized. We are anything you want us to be. We are spineless. That's what Bauman is talking about. We are careful what we say because we are not safe expressing our thoughts. We don't know what are the rules of the game, how we're going to be judged. We live in an extremely unstable world. On the other hand, we do have huge amount of ability and access to various things that we couldn't in the past, but we have this fundamental fear where we are not fully living. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if other people agree, but I do think it starts in the arts, where every movement has started, and it's in the arts. It's in poetry, writing, filmmaking, painting. That's where we connect with our feelings.
We haven't heard from Amit.
Hey gang, sorry, I'm just in a field in France right now, so it's not the best place for video or audio, and I've been in and out. But what a fascinating conversation. Thank you for bringing me in. Nice to see you, Martin. Thank you. That was great.
Thanks for turning up, Amit.
I'm going to have to jump off in a minute, I'm afraid, and I'm aware that if I close it, the whole meeting is going to shut down. So
just like to mention, I've just added Jen to the subgroup, to the WhatsApp, Life Itself Research WhatsApp.
Great, yeah.
Some
So
really
hopefully you
great
can ask
questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, great questions.
Great, thanks again.
Great.
So, yeah, should we leave it there for today? Thanks everyone for coming. Really great discussion.
I posted the
Yeah.
link also for the for where for this presentation, and maybe we can continue the discussion over there because yeah, I'm not done yet.
Nice.
I think I'll do a somewhat of a follow-up on this with a
Yes,
different
yes.
with a different I guess key thinker in due time. I can't say it'll be in a few weeks, but maybe a month.
Good. Lovely.
Great.
Look forward to it.
Thank you.
See you, folks.
Bye.
See you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you.
bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.